Hello friends and potential friends. Well, I thought I'd pop into the lab real quick just to show you my continuing dilemma. Thanks to my impatience, I am loaded down with tomato seedlings. And the funny part is, a lot of them, I don't know what they are. Now I know they're either Floridad, Roma, Everglades, Homestead, or Praxis Cherry. But thanks to my having a first and second planting, I can't look at most of the individual plants and tell you what they are. There are a few exceptions. This guy here, the big one, is a Praxis Cherry. I know that for a fact. And if you look at it, you can see that it's a rather short and very stout plant. Jagged leaves, grows strong. Many times I don't even have to tie those things up. Everglades are another one that I can usually identify, or not Everglades, Homestead, because the leaves are not jagged. They're basically just rounded. So those I can identify. The rest of them, if there's more than one plant in a pot, and most of these have more than one, I can't tell you what any of them are except the main plant, because in this case this is a Roma that I put in there myself. These other guys, I have no idea, though that one might be a Homestead. In fact, some of them in here are starting to try to produce flowers already. So these things need to go outside. The problem is, outside is pretty filled up too. Oh, and incidentally, this one here, I'm guessing that this is a Black Beauty eggplant, because I planted 6 eggplant seeds and only 5 of them came up. This guy came up later in the pot that I have this Praxis Cherry in. So it's kind of a dilemma. I've got lots of tomatoes. I just don't know what a lot of them are. And meanwhile, out here in the main garden, got my salad tower. I took a lot of the Swiss chard and Napa cabbages and romaine lettuces that popped up in the lab, and I used them to fill this thing out. So I should be having salads here pretty soon. Actually, I've been eating some of the little lettuce leaves from time to time. I just haven't picked enough to have a full salad yet. And out here, this has been interesting too. Normally, November is our driest month of the year down here. We generally get between 1.5 and 2 inches of rain in November. Well, starting with the second half of October and going through the first half of November, we didn't get a drop. And I was coming out here watering. My rain barrels were starting to get low, and I started getting stingy with the watering. So a lot of things didn't pop up out here like I would expect them to. For example, in this round bed, I planted a bunch of radish seeds. It's a mix of radishes, so there's going to be a number of different types, but none of them have come up yet. I do still have a few green stalk towers that I need to put together and get filled up. Those are not really going to help me with the tomato situation, although I'm considering putting a tower out on the front porch and filling it up with the Praxis Cherry tomatoes so that I can harvest more seeds. I put them on the front porch because that keeps them well away from all the other tomatoes. Over here, I planted contender bush beans along this side, and thanks to the dry weather, only one of them came up. But Mother Nature decided to help me out a little bit, and in the last week, we basically got a deluge. Last Thursday, I got over 5.5 inches of rain, and now the total for November is a little over 7 inches, which could be worse. I hear Fort Lauderdale has gotten over 100 inches of rain this year, and they normally only get about 60, so they've been flooding down there. So I can't really complain. My perennials, rosemary, for example, they're still going strong. They just keep on going strong. Comfrey's doing good. I planted some mini romaines next to the comfrey. Then I have some slow bolt cilantro. And then one of my experiments. These are Clemson spineless okra. Yeah, I know. You don't grow okra in the winter. Well, you see, I wasn't here last summer to pick okra every day. So I figured if I want more okra, I'm going to have to try to grow it in the winter so that I'm here to pick. This bed over here, I've got a few green onions down at this end. And then I've got a row of elephant garlic, which I planted last spring. It stayed pretty much dormant through the summer, mainly because it was covered up with those sweet potato vines. And once I got the vines off of it, they started growing. The rest of this bed right now is empty, but this is where I plan on planting my seed garlic. I actually broke down and bought seed garlic this year instead of just growing what I get from the grocery store. And I've got to put it in here, but if I do it too soon, it's going to sprout just like that elephant garlic. So I'm figuring somewhere around Christmas time I'll be filling this bed up with garlic. Got some greens back here in the corner. These are collards. These are the actual Georgia broadleaf collards. And down at the far end, my favorites, the cabbage collards that I got from my friends Chris and Darlene at Homesteading the Hard Way. And I love munching on these things. Over on this side, I've got more greens. Got some dinosaur kale there at the end. Then I've got Florida broadleaf mustard. These are a red giant mustard. And then these ones are a slow bolt variety of Napa cabbage. We'll see how slow bolt they are. So far they're growing pretty good. And then out here in the far bin, we got Brussels sprouts at the end there. Black Beauty eggplant. That's another experiment. I know that's a spring and summer crop. But I planted them last year in the spring and they didn't do much of anything for me. So I figured I'd see how they do in the winter. I planted 6 seeds. 5 of them came up, plus that one that I suspect is a eggplant that's in the lab still. Little worms ate one of them, so maybe I'll replace that one with the one in the lab. Because even though it looks like I've got empty spaces in here, I already filled all those empty spaces with radish seeds. Let's see, what else have we got here? Waltham broccoli. And here at this end, I've got the blue Scotch curled kale. And that's actually one of my favorite kales. I like to munch on that when I'm wandering around the garden too. Now over in this bin, I planted several varieties of carrot seeds right here in the middle. I put a board over top of them. And then I waited patiently, checking them every few days. And when I saw that they were starting to sprout underneath the boards, I waited a few more days, and then I took the boards up. And all the little sprouts promptly died because we were still getting up into the 80s every day. But now I'm seeing that some of these things are starting to sprout. I believe that's the red atomic carrots. Over here next to them, I've got a few, very few right now. And these are red cord carrots. And a couple of the other rows in here, I'm seeing some sporadic germination, which I think is due to the rain we had last week. On either side of them, I planted a bunch of different onion seeds. Got Texas early grano, white sweet Spanish onions, southern white globe onion, red burgundy onions, Walla Wallas, more white sweet, more Texas grano, and that one is an Italian red bunching onion. And I am today starting to see a few of those starting to break the ground. So we might actually get some onions out of the deal. As we get closer to the east end of the garden, we have this one lone sweet potato vine. I left that one in there when I harvested the rest of this bed because this vine had produced a few flowers early on, and I was hoping that I could get some seeds out of it to continue the sweet potatoes from seed experiment. But it hasn't produced any more flowers recently, and I don't see any seed pods forming. And I'm planning on filling this side of this bed up with tomatoes. And I've got plenty of tomatoes to do that with. So I'm gonna have to dig this up here pretty soon and get the tomatoes out here. Over on this side, I planted some Blue Lake bush beans. Again, they didn't come up until we got that good rain. Now I'm seeing a number of them popping up out of the ground here. These tomatoes I planted about 2 or 3 weeks ago. At the far end, I've got homesteads, and again you can see from the shape of the leaves that these are definitely homestead tomatoes. And then down here at this end, I've got Everglades. That's a cherry type tomato. Those are all growing pretty good. Got my usual assortment of pineapples, and there's a tub of purslane. There's a tub of ginger that I need to harvest, and there's my gardening buddy Snowflake snoozing in between all of these things. And then I've got those sweet potato slips that I planted the first part of November. I've lost a few of them, so apparently planting sweet potato slips too close together is kind of self-correcting. So that's going to work out pretty good. And finally, we have the patience garden. Now, the asparagus is still trying to teach me patience, and apparently I'm not a very good student because I should have waited on those seeds that I planted early on in the lab. Then if I had, I wouldn't have the problem of having too many tomatoes. But it is what it is, and I'm still trying to learn some patience. Now, there's a couple of things I want to point out in the mini orchard, so let's walk out there. Now, the mini orchard is still pretty rough. I've still got a lot of cleanup to do out here, so I'm not going to try to dig back into some of it. But back in the shade there is my original Ponderosa lemon tree, and this year it's got 3 lemons on it. Hopefully you can see them. There's 2 of them right there, and they're starting to turn on me. And then there's one more, if I can catch it in the middle. Hiding up there. They're not as big as they normally get, but they're still pretty good size. A lot bigger than a standard lemon. My loquat that I grew from seed is up about 10 feet tall. The Meyer lemon that I grew from seed is up about 8 feet tall. Still hasn't produced anything. I've still got an assortment of pineapples spread out here. Sadly, the guava tree did not make it. I think I'm gonna have to give up on guavas. But the pomegranate's doing good. And then back here in the far end, a little bit of sugar cane still growing out here. And the one I really particularly like, this is my Ponderosa lemon that I grew from seed 3 years ago. It's about 8 to 10 feet tall. And I've been keeping my eye on this guy because that thing is just about ready to be harvested. And I might just be making a lemon meringue pie for Thanksgiving. That one is It's not quite as big as they usually get, about the size of a softball, but that's the first lemon this tree's produced, and it produced it after only 3 years coming out of the seed. So I can't be disappointed with that. The other assortment, the mulberry that I grew from a cutting, is about 15 feet tall. Something's been eating on it tremendously, but it just keeps on growing. I've looked for the worms or whatever, and I can't seem to find them, and I don't spray anything on my gardens, so it's just gonna have to fend for itself. There is another pomegranate back in the shade back there, and surprisingly the blueberry is still alive. I'm not sure how that happened, but overall things are growing pretty nicely around here. Oh, I did manage to get rid of that pile of trash and branches that's been pestering me for the last couple of years. It's now mulch spread out amongst the raised beds. And I'm thinking that this spice back here, I've got one more of those raised beds that I still need to put together. So I may put that together, and who knows, maybe I'll fill it up with tomatoes. But overall, things are looking good. Looks like I should have plenty of green down here for my northern friends if they find themselves in need of a green fix. And because of the rain we got in the last week, I suspect everything out here is going to be exploding in the next week or two. So check back and we'll watch the jungle grow. Meanwhile, I'll see you next time.